Monday Night Raw is in the books, and we're going to cover all of it, including Retribution finally being extinguished from WWE, Lana continuing to get put through a table week after week, Drew McIntyre hits a Claymore and then gets his receipt with an RKO, and much more. Let's get it all started right now.
Welcome to the WWE Podcast, the most passionate and authentic wrestling analysis on the web. We've got you covered with every Raw, SmackDown, and NXT show, giving you a no bullshit opinion. We know you love wrestling. We do too. So let's get this show underway.
And that's the bottom line. What? 'Cause Stone Cold said so.
All right, everybody, welcome to the WWE Podcast on this November 3rd, 2020. Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. And boy, oh boy, it's a wild night. If you're into politics, if you live in the United States, and as I record this, results are pouring in from all states. And look, I mean, we may or may not know by the time that we wake up if we have a president-elect or not, but it's a crazy ride right now. People stressed out, certainly, lots of voices being put on social media, lots of arguments, conversations. So that's what we're not here to talk about. Yes, I mentioned it, right? So I'm kind of talking about it on the top, but how can you not, considering that's the number one thing going on right now? And most of you listening to this will probably already know the decision by the time you hear this. So this is all irrelevant, but as I talk right now, as we're recording, it is still up in the air. And a lot of you, again, are stressed, but we're here to de-stress you. So regardless of the results, this show will still continue, whether Biden wins or Trump wins. This show will continue in its existence forever. So as far as I can see, this show's not going anywhere regardless of who the presidential-elect is. So let's just talk about wrestling. And what I've also decided to do, beyond mention this quick thing about the election, because how can I not, the voicemails. You guys have been pouring them in to the point where I cannot fit them in this show. So here's what I'm going to do. At the request of several listeners, who have voiced their opinions, and I do agree, I'm going to make the voicemails its own show. I may occasionally put one or two in here and not just do a separate show if there's only a couple. But I think it would do you guys a disservice to hear so many voicemails at the top of the show. So I will forego all of those voicemails. I do have them. I mean, I do have quite a few that I'll be able to do a separate show for, and I may call it the WWE Podcast Mailbag or something. I know mailbag is used by another top podcast, whatever. It works. I mean, I'm not particularly ripping off any other podcasts out there. It's a term that works and makes sense. So I may call it the mailbag or something, and it won't happen every single week. It'll happen when necessary, and I'll pop in voicemails here and there at the back end of shows when I do these reviews, because I don't think it's fair that I title a show Raw Review, SmackDown, whatever, Week in Review, and then for the first 30 minutes it's all voicemails. I've kind of come to realize that. I kind of, slapped myself upside the head. I was like, wait a minute. Some people may enjoy the voicemails, but you'll still get them. It'll just be in a separate show. And if you do hear them in regular shows like this, it will be on the back end. I think that is the best way to do things. So a WWE Podcast Mailbag show is coming your way in theaters near you shortly, whether it's tomorrow or Thursday. I don't want to add another day of recording to my week. I can't fit it every week anyway, and I'm sure my wife would have something to say about that as well, as I stretch my free time doing this and not spending it doing other things. So, hey, but I love wrestling, and you do too, so let's talk wrestling. By the way, if you want to add to my voicemail mountain, you can do so at real WWE podcast at gmail.com, or you can always send a voicemail to the show. And that number, if you're wondering what the voicemail call-in number is 518-952-0247. 7. So quite a few to get to in my mailbag show coming your way, again, in the next couple of days. I don't want to wait a full week to do it, or, I was going to originally call it like Mailbag Monday, but what if the mailbag doesn't make sense to do on Monday? They're talking about outdated stuff. So it's coming your way. Just wanted to make that known to everyone here. And also, a new show will be coming your way. Yes, a new show right here on the WWE podcast feed. And that will actually be covering a promotion, a wrestling promotion that I have never covered here. And that's a really good thing. Something that I am honestly ignorant to. And that's something that I'm sure many of you either don't follow or follow casually. Maybe you're more versed in this promotion than I am, and that's awesome. So here's what it's going to happen, guys. This coming Saturday, November 7th, will be the debut episode of this NJWP, New Japan Pro Wrestling coverage. And it's going to be hosted by Zach Downing. So he's going to be the newest member to the WWE podcast team here. He is relatively new to the audio world, but I think you'll enjoy the way that he delivers his analysis. Him and I have been talking for a little while now, and I think you'll enjoy his coverage. I think it's going to be interesting and also educational, really. I mean, not that this is a class, but I think it's good to also look around at other promotions. Yes, this is the WWE podcast. Many of you may think, "Wait, you're abandoning No. And you know what? I've never looked at this show as exclusive WWE. We covered AEW at times, right? Like, I don't think that it's one versus the other. I mean, in WWE land, it's WWE versus like nobody, because there's nobody that is at the level of WWE. Nobody has the resources WWE has. So I don't look at it in a rivalry type of way where it's one or the other. You got to pick a side. I've never viewed it that way. So New Japan Pro Wrestling will be covered starting this Saturday, and I hope you guys give a nice warm round of applause and welcome to Zach Downing, who will be joining us covering New Japan Pro Wrestling. So that'll be fun. I think it'll be a nice little Saturday treat for you guys if you are interested in such things, or maybe you just start following. If you want to get into another wrestling promotion, there are other ones out there. So okay, so enough of that. Let's jump into Monday Night Raw. Overall, it was kind of a weird show. I didn't get the sense that I was super excited about it. I didn't get more excited about Survivor Series after the show than when I began the show. But I also didn't feel negatively as a whole about the show. I mean, there were certain segments that made me groan, as is kind of typical and par for the course for WWE programming. But it wasn't a show that I looked at it and went, oh, that was terrible. But I also didn't look at it and go, that was great, I'm more excited. It was really like a 5 out of 10. I normally don't give number grades or anything like that, but this to me was a 5 out of 10. And I felt very neutral about it. Certainly some good things. Certainly some things that could have been improved upon, and you had your groan-inducing segments, and you had your segments that you're like, all right, I'm interested in this. I'm down for this. Let's see where it goes. So let's jump into it. And I'm going to start with really the top thing that happened on Monday Night Raw, which I think, and you could argue, was the Drew and Orton and Fiend program, right? So it's really the Fiend who has identified Orton as his next target. Drew McIntyre is almost a third wheel here. And to be totally honest with you, I'm feeling a little bit down on Drew McIntyre's decisions as of late. He not only is continuing his character is continuing a feud that I think most fans are ready to kind of move on from, but he also spoils a Money in the Bank cash-in. His character spoils a Money in the Bank cash-in, and you could argue, and WWE tried to do so, that the reason his character interfered in the cash-in with The Miz, who took advantage of a downed Randy Orton after the Claymore, the reason he did it was to say that he wanted to be the one to take it from Randy Orton. And I don't think that's a strong enough reason to spoil that moment. And even though it's a heel cashing in on a babyface, heel cashing in on a heel champion, it still is an exciting moment as a fan. Whenever that briefcase is cashed in, it's just exciting. And it felt like that babyface Drew character took away from it. They took away from that moment. And not that I want to see Miz as champion, right? Like, I don't. No, but I don't think anybody really has any significant vested emotional interest in the Miz character. How can you? He is just... I don't know how to describe the Miz other than a lack of evolution in his character. And I don't think... Listen, I want to be very clear. I'm not disrespecting the man, okay? He is very talented on the mic as far as being able to have a I guess a promo delivery style that is perfect to WWE's taste. Not mine, but to WWE's taste. He has longevity. He's very rarely injured. All of those things. He has some qualities. He's a decent wrestler too. But the character of The Miz, now you pair Morrison with him, you pull them back both like 8 years, and The Miz has been stagnant in his character development for many years now. Many years. He went to babyface for a little against The Fiend, right? But he is always... I think he's just a born-to-be heel who has really not found a way to evolve. I think that's the perfect way to put him, maybe, is a lack of evolution. It's the same guy we've seen for 10 years. That's The Miz. And I think that's why I'm so tired of seeing him. And then you plug the Morrison in there, who's... He is like literally channel changing the way when he talks. When he's in the ring, there's no problem. But the way that he talks, his promo delivery is not... I mean, seriously, I have very little promo skill and ad-lib experience, but I can tell you right now, I could probably cut a better promo than he could. He's just got an awkward delivery about him that's off-putting, and not in a heel heat. I won't hope he gets his ass kicked way. Just in like it makes you groan. I'm not a Morrison mic fan. In-ring, fine. He's clearly in shape. But I think the Miz and Morrison pairing is regressing both of them. I don't know. I think I'm going on a tangent here about Miz and Morrison. But Drew, circling back, see, I go on these tangents, but I bring it back home. Drew's character here on Monday night really made me feel disappointed and almost annoyed at the character. And I think that's the first time that I felt annoyed at the Drew McIntyre babyface character since he turned babyface and won the championship 7 months ago. That is really the first time, and that's striking to me. And I also felt this way. So I guess last night was really the second time, because the first time was when the babyface character Drew decided to continue the program with Orton last week and continued to attack him. And it's just, I'm over it. I know he is supposed to get his rematch. That's just kind of logic in wrestling. I understand that, but it just feels like it's going on too long. And what's making this more annoying to me as a wrestling fan trying to get behind the babyface Drew character is that it's Randy Orton who's the one who's trying to avoid Drew. And, Drew's the one agitating Orton. And Orton won fair and square in Hell in a Cell. He didn't pull any shenanigans. Everything's legal. So it's not like as if Drew has a reason to be angry at Orton because, he used brass knucks in a straight-up wrestling match, right? Or he pulled the tights or used the ropes, the referee was distracted, or he had a low blow or a foreign object. No. It was a straight-up one-on-one program where Randy Orton was the better man at Hell in a Cell. And that, to me, should be like, okay, it's time to move on. It's time to move on, and Drew McIntyre just refuses to. I don't think there's a need right now to have these two together. I don't, and at least there's the Fiend here. So this is the second part I want to talk about with Raw. The Fiend seems to be woven through Raw last week, woven through Raw this week, and I am enjoying that. It's we're not getting the Fiend. I'm glad he didn't show up at all this week. I'm glad. We got the hint at it. We get the flashes of the images. And it's nice that he's not being overexposed as using that character, because that's a special character that they need to, remind themselves less is more. Plus, you have the addition of Alexa Bliss, who is adding so much. I can't say enough about Alexa Bliss. Is she perfect in her acting skills? And what I'd like to see? No. But she's doing a really nice job here. and making herself more relevant than she's been in years. Maybe since she faced Ronda Rousey and got hurt how many times against Rousey when she was Raw Women's Champion. This is certainly the biggest angle she's been in a very long time, and she's killing it, and she knows it's a big angle. So, again, she is, seriously, I mean, the camera agrees with her. She's a very, very attractive woman, but that's not even the point. The point is that she is going and evolving and progressing, I should say is the word I was looking for. She's progressing every week to get more and more into her character and what she should understand that she is. Like, what is Alexa Bliss to the Fiend? You know, we still don't know that answer other than she's brainwashed. She's somehow hypnotized by the Fiend. That's all we know. And Nikki Cross even this week tried to approach her, and she had her back to the camera. Alexa did, and Nikki went up and said, "You haven't returned my phone calls, my texts, blah, blah, blah. Is this about the Fiend?" And Alexa finally turns around, and she's got those like fiery contacts in her eyes. They're fine. Like, I don't find them hokey. I mean, it's exactly what you should do. It's wrestling, okay? I don't expect it to be completely perfectly believable. Just take me out of my reality. That's what wrestling is. Take me out of my day. Take me out of my work day. Take me out of the stress in my life. Make me forget that I have any problems in my life and I just get involved in this world. And that's what the ultimate goal is. And that's what I think Alexa Bliss has accomplished here. She's really trying her best, and I got to give her credit, because not only is she helping herself in this big time in her career, and I ultimately wonder what the end game is with this, right? Where does Alexa Bliss go? Does she end up as champion? I would think yes. Eventually taking it from Asuka. I'd love that, as them with being dual champions. I would love it. So I ultimately think, yes, Alexa Bliss does capture the Raw Women's Championship for sure. But, and maybe a returning Charlotte would challenge her. We'll see. Again, I'm like 2 steps, 3 steps ahead of myself. I'm just fantasy booking. But the other piece of this is, beyond Alexa Bliss benefiting in a major way, is the Fiend. Bray Wyatt himself. And maybe even on the side, the cult leader, the Swamp cult leader of the Bray Wyatt personality is also benefiting. All 3 of those personalities are benefiting from this pairing, because you're starting to see depth in the character. You're starting to understand what the Fiend stands for. You're starting to see what he can do to people, that he's all about changing people. You're starting to see that, you know, look, somebody can align herself with the Fiend. And, you know, you wonder why Alexa's still there. Like, everyone else has been changed. She's the only one that's stuck around. So, you know, I wonder if that'll ever be fleshed out. Also this week, we had her on the Firefly Funhouse. She's entertaining there as well. All in on her character, being that kind of like sweet, evil girl that you never know when she's going to snap. You know that the outside of her being nice is a facade. You know it's a mask. You know eventually she's going to snap and she's going to bring out the Fiend. I also like the flashbacks that they did with Randy Orton burning the house down of Sister Abigail in the woods from a few years ago. I love when they bring that stuff back. It rewards fans for watching. Too often in wrestling today, WWE is obviously front and center when I say this. Storylines are, once they're done, they're forgotten, right? Like you're done, you're over. Oh, it's over. We move on. Fans don't remember, and we go to the next thing, the next program. Oh, okay, that's done. It's over. When you bring back storylines that make sense, and the fans have seen it a number of years ago, and they bring it back, it makes it feel like a long story arc, even though obviously it wasn't designed like that back then. The Fiend wasn't even a character we could have even imagined, and it wasn't even thought of, but it makes it feel in your mind like this is a story that we thought was over, and it makes sense that it's continuing. Oh, it makes sense that the Fiend would be angry at Orton. It makes sense. And when we can say it makes sense in our brains, it releases endorphins. We go, oh, that's nice, right? Like that's a story I can follow. It's easy to understand. We know why the Fiend is angry at Orton. We remember why, and now Orton is in peril. Can the Fiend capture the championship? We don't know. We don't know that answer. I mean, I don't think the answer is yes. I think the answer is no. I think we're building eventually towards a triple threat between Orton, Drew, and the Fiend, probably at TLC. I would think that's where it's going, because we got to get past Survivor Series. That's just nothing more than a complete dumpster fire and a throwaway pay-per-view. Yeah, I thought about that today. Survivor Series has become a throwaway pay-per-view. And it really hurts me to say that. And I really didn't even consider that phrase until today. Because the more that I watch WWE programming around Survivor Series time, and the more that I don't care, and the fans don't care about the rivalry between SmackDown and Raw, it's not a good marketing scheme, because there's, you know why? And look, I hate to repeat myself, but I'm giving you reasons why, because that's a pretty big thing to say for fans to say that Survivor Series is now a throwaway pay-per-view. Because it is, and here's why. It's a rivalry made up by the calendar, by the pay-per-view calendar. It's a rivalry that just is a scheduled rivalry, number one. How many times do you want to see a scheduled rivalry versus organic? If this was an organic brand rivalry, maybe you could get behind it, right? Like if somebody crossed over and they weren't supposed to cross over, they made a sneak attack on somebody on, say, from Raw to SmackDown, and that person from SmackDown retaliated on Raw, and then more people get involved, more people sneak over, and it just becomes this organic. You want to see them duel it out. You want to see who the winner is, and you want to know what's at stake. And there should be something at stake. And that's how a rivalry, if you're going to do a brand rivalry, should be. It should be organic. It should be something that just kind of happens. It should make sense. It should have various stories woven through it with separate rivalries between the stars on those opposing brands. That's how a successful brand rivalry, again, very oversimplistic, but in general, organic rivalries, at least produced organic rivalries, are more effective. I mean, we see produced organic rivalries all the time, but you don't see scheduled rivalries every year. The only scheduled rivalry you have is Survivor Series. Every other pay-per-view is not a scheduled rivalry. You may say, well, what are you talking about? Hell in a Cell and Elimination Chamber? No, yeah. Those aren't brand versus brand, though. So, those, as much as I complain about Hell in a Cell being scheduled, and it's really just a shame, and it's such a disservice to the Hell in a Cell match itself. Elimination Chamber, I kind of feel neutral about. I don't hate it as much as some people. Rumble is a classic. I have no problem with the Royal Rumble. It's an absolute one of probably my favorite pay-per-view of the year, even more so than WrestleMania. But the whole fact that this is the only rivalry scheduled throughout the entire year, so you know it's coming. Okay, so the predictability out the window. Yeah, predictability is not everything, but when it's scheduled every year, you kind of groan. The brand split just happened, so you know when you see these people, these men and women fight in their 5 versus 5 teams, and they fight, and they're in the ring. It's like, well, we just kind of saw them like a month ago before the brand split, so it's not really like they've had time to evolve on each of their shows and make it feel like they're separate worlds. You're kind of like, well, they just were on those brands together, and they were just drafted 4 weeks ago. So there's that. And then not only that, not only a forced rivalry, not only scheduled, not only are there just absolutely no reason for them to be fighting, but you also have no consequences for this matches, I should say. It's not just the 5-on-5, but the champion versus champion matches. 0 consequence. 0. None. Somebody argue with me, please. I'm begging you. Argue with me how Survivor Series has consequences. You can't. You know why? Because in the past, it has never happened. There have never been consequences. And I brought this up too, but this is the most extreme example to prove my point. A few years ago, SmackDown was swept by Raw on all of their matches. What was the consequence? Anybody remember? Yeah, I don't either, because there wasn't one. I went back and checked. No consequences. Nothing. Nobody gets fired. Nobody gets stripped of their championships. Everyone just goes back to their own little worlds like it didn't happen. But damn it, for these next few weeks, we're going to all pretend that just because we're all in the same, we're all in the same color, that we're supposed to care about, teaming up to defend Raw's honor. I mean, like, it's stupid. It's just so stupid. So that's why this whole pay-per-view is a complete throwaway. And it's insane that one of the big 4 pay-per-views is a throwaway. How about that for a hot take? Survivor Series is a throwaway pay-per-view. Now, this year, Undertaker, Fiend, if they have an interaction, not a waste of a pay-per-view. Yes, these matches that happen, while they have no consequence from a title perspective or from really any other perspective between the two, like for example, Orton and Reigns, or Sami Zayn and Bobby Lashley, just to take those examples, they have no consequence between those two individuals for each match. But it's a clear setup for a match that those individuals could have with their rivals on their brand. What do I mean by that? Take, for example, Roman Reigns and Orton. It doesn't matter who wins that. I hope Roman Reigns, I'll say it, Roman Reigns, I hope, wins that, because I think he's on a much hotter track than Orton is. But what's going to happen in that match is, I think Orton is going to have some kind of interaction with the Fiend, right? You're going to have Reigns win by the Fiend interaction. And I think that's going to set up Orton and the Fiend at TLC, possibly with Drew McIntyre getting involved somewhere. So that's what this is for. That's why it's a throwaway. And yes, could the Fiend also have an interaction with The Undertaker? Yes, I hope he does. Undertaker's going to clearly be live. I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be. And it's a damn shame that there are no fans in the arena to actually celebrate this with him. 30 freaking years in the company. November 1990. What were you doing in 1990? Some of you may not even have been born. Some of you weren't even in a thought, a twinkle in your mother's eye. Myself? Because I'm sure you're all wondering and like, oh, what were you doing, right? Yeah, I'm sure you all care. But I'm going to tell you anyway. In 1990, in November of 1990, I was in kindergarten. I was in kindergarten in a Catholic school. Yeah, how about that? I was 5 years old when this happened. Probably peeing my pants in kindergarten, which is, sad fact, actually what happened my first day in kindergarten. Too scared to ask the teacher to go to the bathroom. That's a real story. I'll stop there. But that's where I was. Where were you? In 1990. That's how long the dead man has been around and a thing. It's just absolutely insane. No other career has even come close to The Undertaker's. I mean, as much as I love Austin is still my favorite of all time. Rock is a close second. Kane is also up there, more higher than most. I'm a huge Kane fan. Undertaker, though, I think if you put a vote out, would probably win the greatest WWE superstar wrestler of all time. I think he would beat out Austin simply because of his longevity, his ability to evolve the character when he needed to, right? He didn't just stay the exact same. He would change something. Even if he stayed the dead man, which is what he was for about 80% of his career in WWE, outside of the American Badass for a few years, he would tweak his hair, tweak his facial hair, tweak his outfit, change his music or lighting or makeup a little bit, his wardrobe, his moveset. He knew just how to and when to pull the trigger on these things. It's, I think, a unspoken intangible that he has that I think a lot of wrestlers today could learn from. And yes, it's a much different environment in 2020 versus the 90s in wrestling, where people seem to be walking on eggshells around Vince. They're just kind of like, yes, sir, no, sir, I'll do it. And they be the good little soldier, and they don't feel that they can have any creative control over their character, or they're fearful of speaking up for being for being demoted or being their spot being taken or whatever. So I understand it's a completely different culture. I think actually to the deficit of the characters and wrestlers today because of how intense it is backstage and everything else like that. But that's a topic for another day. So how the hell did I get on this dead man thing? Oh, yeah, Survivor Series. I mean, again, outside of that moment happening at Survivor Series, I am, and other programs that are going to be, other matches that are just used as templates or stepping stones to get the actual rivalries that are going to matter at TLC set up. That's it. That's all this is for. Other than that, Survivor Series is a throwaway pay-per-view from a storyline perspective, not from an exhibition. If you love exhibition matches, for matches that really don't have consequence, you just want to pair people up with no good story, then this is the pay-per-view for you, right? Like, people have been asking, if you've been asking, oh, I want to see Orton and Reigns, and you're one of those people that just likes the idea of somebody versus somebody, but you don't really necessarily even think or care about the story, then look, you're probably a different breed of wrestling fan than me. No one's better than the other. You look at wrestling differently, and that's fine. So if you love that kind of wrestling where you just want to pair people together like you're, managing your roster on WWE 2K20 or 2K19 or whatever the hell you have, then fine. You want to play Video Game Master? Yeah, this is the pay-per-view for you. But okay, I think I've beaten this into the ground. Moving on, some other things that happened on Monday Night Raw. Lana. Hey. Lana. Where do I even begin with this? Because for a long time, weeks and weeks and weeks, maybe even months now, I have been calling for Lana to just go away. And you know what? I stand by that. I'm not backing down just because they're giving her more time and she's okay in the ring and all. No. I just want to make it clear that I'm not backtracking on what I said. I still stand by my guns that Lana should take time off, be repackaged, or just plain go away. I mean that. I'm not saying be fired. Okay? There's a difference between being fired. I didn't say let go. I didn't say fired. I didn't say future endeavored. I just think she needs time away from the screen. But that's not the direction they're going. This is just one lonely fan and his opinion. So Lana comes out to watch the match between Dana Brooke, Mandy Rose versus Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship. Holy crap. They actually acknowledge they have a Women's Tag Team Championship. Wow. So we have really the only two teams on Raw that are women's tag teams fighting for the championship. So it's really, if you're a women's tag team in WWE right now as a whole, you've got like a 1 in 4 chance of carrying that belt. I mean, it's the depth and competition that you have to deal with to compete for those championships is just piss poor, right? Like you don't need to hang around long to get an opportunity at that championship, which automatically devalues it, but whatever. Apparently there was an organic mover for a women's tag team championship. There wasn't. WWE tried to make it look like there was, and they planted fans in the audience holding signs that's something to the effect of "We want women's tag belts" or something. When WWE did that, I was taken back by that. But Lana did come down to view this match kind of as a spectator. And there were moments where Shayna and Lana interacted. It seemed like this should be a DQ, but after a distraction for Shayna, she was able to kick Dana into Lana and lock a Kirifuda clutch for the win. I don't know Lana's purpose for being down there, but we found out later it was just to be attacked by Nia Jax and put through a table for the 7th time. Literally, the 7th time. So, now, I don't know what their long-term plans are for Lana. I've heard rumors from several sites corroborating that WWE is looking at her to be the next big women's star eventually. I could completely eat my words and they could be right. I'm not a Lana fan from an in-ring to a personality perspective. Her promos have always gotten under my skin. And again, not in a, well, she's a heel, or she's making you mad, that's what you want. No. There's a difference between wanting to change the channel and getting angry and wanting to stick around to see somebody shut that person up. Big difference. So, Lana to me has been the latter, where I just don't, or the former, where I just don't want to see her on my screen. And I wanted her to go away for a long period of time. And she just continued to hang out as Bobby Lashley's wife that eventually got divorced. And she then still hung around backstage. She hasn't gone away. And I hope I eat my words. I hope I do, because then that's great for WWE. It's great for her as a character, and from a personal perspective, more money in her pocket. Fine. I don't care. Great. I hope I'm wrong. This is my own personal opinion as it stands on November 3rd, 2020, and has stood for quite a while, that I am just the Lana character is completely off-putting and not in a good heel way. So, but Lana gets put through a table again. And it's just an ongoing running joke that we're all supposed to take her seriously, yet she gets put through a table 7 times in a row. It's, I don't know. Okay, moving on. Let's see. R-Truth versus Bobby Lashley. I mean, honestly, I don't know what to say about this. Anytime I see R-Truth, as much as I am a fan of him as a person, and if you haven't seen the WWE, I believe it was Untold with R-Truth. I think it was Untold. Just search R-Truth, Ron Killings, where they went through his entire life and career. It was very, very well done, and it makes you have a lot more respect for the man. So I have no problem with him as the man, even the character R-Truth, but the 24/7 title is just, it's just the drizzling you-know-what. So I don't really have anything to say about this. I mean, we eventually got Gulak winning the 24/7 championship after Lashley put the Hurt Lock on R-Truth. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Okay, Sheamus, Keith Lee, Braun Strowman in a triple threat match after AJ Styles came out with Jordan O. I'll leave it at that. His associate, who was dressed like a bodyguard at a nightclub in the 80s. I don't have any other way to say it, because he's got the turtleneck with the gold chain. It's very, very 80s. He looks like a bouncer at, like I said, at the strip club in the 1980s. So I'm interested in what comes of this relationship with these two. I have no problem with this pairing, because I'm interested to see where it goes. And I think AJ at least has a wrinkle of something different. Something. So there is that. But not only do we have AJ and Jordan O, where AJ just assumes he's the team captain. Keith Lee comes out, and then Sheamus ends up coming out, and they all fight over who's going to be the team captain, right? Well, Braun Strowman comes out, and apparently he's not automatically on the team. He has to qualify, which I'm fine with. You know what? As much as from a name value perspective, he should just be on the team because of what he can do and his body of work. Certainly, he makes sense to be on the team. However, I have to give credit where credit is due and give respect to the creative team and Vince, whoever made that decision, a small one, but one that I noticed, to actually make Braun qualify. Makes sense. I'm a big fan of making the team members that are on this team have a reason for them being there, and how did they get there? Did they all have to qualify? The answer is yes. So Braun Strowman ends up qualifying after he beat Keith Lee and Sheamus. Sheamus was there as the foil. You all knew that Keith Lee wasn't going to take the fall. I also love how Keith Lee didn't speak in his normal kind of super slow, I know I'm different at cutting promos, so I'm going to make it really different by speaking like this. And he doesn't, it's kind of like a mix of Triple H, I know, but I don't know. I'm glad that he kind of spoke more normally, and I have no problem with him adding a wrinkle of differentiation to his promo, but it was almost to the point of being so different that you're different, so you're going to exaggerate the difference to 10, right? That's the issue I had with this promo ability, or promo delivery, not ability. He's good on the mic, by the way. Keith Lee's good for where he's at right now. He's in a good spot, and certainly in main events and everything else. They're looking at Keith Lee to be a big player for a long time, and I agree. So we got a Keith Lee and really not involved in the decision, and Sheamus took the fall. Now, Braun Strowman qualifies. That's fine. makes sense. He should be on the team, and then they all attack each other at the end of the show after they tried to shake hands and that didn't work. And then, oh my God, what are they going to do? Who's the team captain? As if that means something. How are they going to get along? They're all, they've all just been fighting with one another over the last few weeks. How are they going to come together to fight a common cause? I mean, that's the same story every year. And is anyone else a little bit over the triple threats that are just automatically no disqualification? Why, by default, is a triple threat match no DQ? Anybody ever bother to think about that? Why is, if we make a triple threat match, does that automatically mean tables, ladders, chairs, barbed wire, thumbtacks, everything's legal? Why? And somebody may say, well, what happens if it isn't a no DQ and somebody does something that is would normally cause a DQ? Simple answer. That person is eliminated from the match. They leave. They're gone. So if it's a triple threat match and I hit somebody in the back with a chair, I'm out. The match doesn't end because of me doing something and then the other person who wasn't even involved gets screwed because that was out of their control. That's what most people would argue. I would say just that person who committed the act is gone. They're out. Now and then it's a one-on-one. That's how I would do it, but WWE won't do that. It'll just be by default for the rest of our lives, a triple threat match is always a no DQ match. Makes no sense. No sense. Okay. Let's move on. Okay. Nia Jax versus Lana, I already went through. I'm going through my notes here. New Day versus the Hurt Business. So, one thing I'll say. MVP has really, really made the Hurt Business what it is. He has killed it in this role, and I have to give him all the props in the world because he's also raising up Bobby Lashley. He's raising up Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander that was otherwise irrelevant in 205 Live and then still irrelevant as teaming with Ricochet. MVP is truly the MVP right now. He really is what his name says he is. He is helping out so many careers, and I just can't say enough about MVP. I just can't. So, here's the thing. Did he really say that he took care of Retribution and he'd like his payment in the form of a tag team championship match against the New Day? So, number one, is that really the payment? Is the payment really worth the benefit that you gave WWE by getting rid of Retribution? Is that really a balanced equation here? Because remember, Retribution for months was not able to be handled by security because WWE had minor league security. They were tearing things up, assaulting people, lawsuits that didn't ever happen, but in real life would have. I mean, they didn't even bring that up. Tearing stuff up, $1,000 worth of equipment, assaulting non-talent, right? All that stuff. And all they ask for is a tag team championship match. You could have just asked the New Day, right? Or just attack them. You could have got your opportunity for free. But fine. I'm only nitpicking because these are the things that just when I look at it, I go, that doesn't make sense. It's not even close to a fair payment for the service they provided WWE. But I like how they at least acknowledged, I'll get it out, that MVP did go to Adam Pearce, if you remember, a number of weeks ago, if not a month or two ago, and say that we can take care of this Retribution problem for a price. And Adam Pearce agreed, and they started to attack Retribution on a weekly basis. So they're at least trying to tie it up, and I appreciate that. I do. The other piece of this, though, is Retribution really gone? Is Retribution just non-existent? Can we all get an amen, right? Can we get an hallelujah? If that's actually the case, now they may show up bigger, stronger, badder than ever. Very possible. Absolutely possible. I'd actually put it at a 50-50 chance. Or they've just completely written off Retribution, and we can all breathe a sigh of relief that this garbage angle is over. It's a garbage angle, and you've heard me tear it down many times on this show. One of the worst, I'd say most just egregiously terrible storylines in terms of storytelling, and just a massive holes in plot lines that I've almost ever seen from WWE. It's not Katie Vick level, but boy is it up there. It's just awful in execution. It wasn't thought through. Just one of those deals that Vince heard and just, we'll run with it. We'll fill in the holes as we go. And he didn't fill in a single hole. I mean, not one. And he thought the fans wouldn't care. But guess what we do? Because they aren't showcasing Retribution. Clearly they know that either by the minute-by-minute ratings are showing it, or social media is showing it, or it's a combination of both, that Retribution and the Angle is a total and complete flop. So let's hope it's that, and not that they think, well, they think they're gone and they're going to come back bigger and stronger than ever. No, please. Please. Okay. But the New Day, before this whole match between the New Day and the Hurt Business took place, they came out and put over all the members of the Hurt Business for their skill and their longevity, except for Cedric, obviously. And it was really a longer than necessary promo between these two. And it really showcased why I despise New Day. As much as I enjoy the Hurt Business, and I enjoy the Hurt Business more than I think most do, and I just praise them for at least tying up the storyline with MVP and Adam Pearce. Good stuff. But the New Day, man, oh man, can they get any more unlikable? I mean, seriously, I'm asking seriously to people out there, how can you still be a New Day fan? They have been the same act for 6 years. They have been the same tired act for 6 years of nothing bothers us. I'll even lose my championship. Who cares? I've had pancakes in my tights. I can throw it out to kids in the first row. I mean, like it's just absurd. And the way that they talk so obnoxiously. They can't take things seriously. I was actually just backing the Hurt Business because they were calling out New Day for just always cracking jokes and not being serious. It's very obnoxious. It's not endearing. It's not anything other than just, come on. Like, can this New Day thing still end? And the answer is no. The answer is no. It will probably never end. Never. Okay. Moving on. We got Ricochet versus Tucker. And here's where I'm going to eat my words, right? Because this is something that did not appear on the Hulu version of Raw. It did not. So everything I just ranted about Retribution being gone, boy, I'm going to eat my words live on the air right now, as I heard, and you heard my rant about Retribution maybe being gone. We can all say hallelujah and amen. You may be thinking, wait a minute, what the hell are you talking about? Ricochet was attacked, right? So now my stomach just went through my my you-know-what. And okay, well, Retribution is not gone. So how can they actually say... This makes me even more angry, actually. As much as I kind of look like a fool, right? Because I didn't see this match actually happened. So you were probably like... You're probably laughing at me. And that's fine, because I'd laugh at me too. But I think the bigger point is here, beyond me just completely missing this match and the fact that Retribution is still here... Here's the problem. Okay, I'm reading this match as it happened because I really just somehow missed this completely. I'll read this verbatim and then I'll give you my thoughts. Ricochet versus Tucker. Here we go. Earlier in the day, Ricochet confronted Tucker about his betrayal of Otis and challenged him to a match. Ricochet beats Tucker with ease, and suddenly Ali shows up, followed by Retribution, who attack both Tucker and Ricochet. The beatdown ends with Retribution standing dominant over Ricochet. And the reason that I think that this is even more of a sin than my completely missing this, and I host a wrestling podcast, so there, how about that? Is how does the Hurt Business claim they've done the job when Retribution is still around? So now the segment with MVP makes no sense. Yeah, you were victorious over Retribution a couple of times, and they have yet to win a match, which is just plain sad. But how can you claim that the job is done when they're still around? Your goal should be that they are gone, period. Goodbye, they don't exist. That's when you say mission accomplished. Okay, well, that was double embarrassing. Let's move on and pretend this didn't happen. Okay, let's see. Miz and Morrison versus Drew McIntyre. Again, Drew McIntyre wins this, but did you expect anything less? Do you expect anything less from Drew McIntyre to beat these two? I mean, these two are jokes. I'm sorry. They're jokes of characters because they haven't evolved. They're still living in, like, 2010. Okay. But at the end of the match, with like 30 seconds left of Raw, Randy Orton strikes with an RKO. And Randy Orton stands tall, and we get just an ending to Raw that is just kind of, again, a 5 out of 10. I think Raw ended and was generally a 5 out of 10. It just kind of was what it was. It didn't help or hurt the storylines. It was kind of just a maintenance show. It was just kind of like, let's get through the week. We're not sure what to do. We still got a few weeks till the Survivor Series. We don't want to really push things too far, because then if we push things too far, then we won't have anything to make it through like the last week before the show. So let's kind of just spin our wheels, which I understand. There's a lot of programming to put on here. 3 hours is a lot of time to cover. A ton of time. So I'm fine with it. Randy Orton hits an RKO. It feels like just kind of like the last few months. Just kind of your standard Crow Raw. The only other match that happened that I did see, was on Hulu, that I did not mention, was Jeff Hardy versus Elias in a guitar on a pole match. I'm sighing a lot if you're noticing. I know some of you don't like sighing, but I'm just being authentic in how I feel here. So Elias versus Jeff Hardy. A rivalry that, I'm sorry to say, how can anyone care about this? How can anyone actually have an emotional attachment to this? Outside of Jeff Hardy being a legacy star, and you have, nostalgic feelings for him because he was in the Attitude Era or the Ruthless Aggression Era, and he gave you a bunch of great moments as a tag team in the Hardy Boys with Matt Hardy. And certainly I feel the same way. Tons of memories, 20 years of memories with Jeff Hardy. I get it. But outside of that, I feel nothing for Elias. Nothing. And Jeff Hardy is just kind of like that little warm, fuzzy feeling because he's a legacy star. But this rivalry was generated from nowhere. And you could say, well, wait a minute. He was the one in the parking lot back in May where he was framed to have hit Elias. And Elias was sent to the hospital and he was gone for 4 months or whatever it was. Yeah, but again, did Elias not watch Raw the last 5 months? Realizing that it wasn't Jeff Hardy, that the assailant was described as having a red beard and red hair, all signs pointing to Sheamus was being the assailant and setting up Jeff Hardy? And did he not even consider that? Or are we just all going to forget that? I didn't. But nonetheless, we have a heel Elias who's flip-flopping from heel to babyface more than the Big Show did. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Big Show flip-flopped from heel to babyface like a stupid number of times, like 50-some times. Somebody actually has counted this. And Elias is on track. He's on pace to at least tie the Big Show in his career. It's absurd how many times they flipped him from face to heel. And when you do that, it makes fans kind of feel indifferent because they can't attach to one personality that you have because eventually it's going to flip. You can't be trusted. You can't be trusted. You can't be trusted to be hated, and you can't be trusted to be loved because eventually, sooner than later, they're going to flip to the other way. And so you just start to not care. So that's how I feel about this rivalry, this program, because there's really no basis for it other than a false accusation that was proven not to be true. And a character in Elias that is flip-flopped so many times that people are just empathetic about it, or apathetic about it, in his character. And we have this guitar on a pole match, which all we're looking for is, okay, let's just see somebody get hit in the back with a guitar. It's visually pleasing, and let's move on. That's how we're feeling. Let's be straight with ourselves here. So, the funny thing was, if you saw Raw, Jeff Hardy gets the guitar that's up on a pole. and he jumps off either the second rope or the top rope and slams Elias in the back with the guitar really hard. And it didn't break. It didn't break. That may be the first time that I've seen a guitar not even move an inch. Sometimes it doesn't break all the way. It'll kind of break, and the back will get caved in, but it won't explode. Like I remember Jeff Jarrett's guitars would have such a visually pleasing explosion. It was like a bomb was inside of it, and it would just explode hilariously. In this case, I don't know what they did. They reinforced the back of this. Jeff Hardy ends up at the end of the match slamming the guitar on the ring post just to smash it. But it was a very odd ending to Raw, and he hit him hard. It wasn't like he pulled it. He did it almost looks like as hard as he could to smash the guitar and have the explosion of wood everywhere, and it just didn't happen. But Jeff Hardy wins, and the announcers kind of alluded to this being the final match here. Well, I hope it is, because there's nothing here to really pull apart. It's very dry. There's nothing here. The babyface wins, Jeff Hardy wins, and I think we can all move on with our lives. So, alrighty. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I believe I covered most of everything from Raw. Again, it was like a 5 out of 10 for me. Not the best Raw, certainly not the worst Raw. Just kind of a maintenance, very little progression in stories, keep things as they are type of show. And look, you're going to have these once in a while. And that's fine. I'm not knocking WWE. They've had a good string of shows on SmackDown and Raw at times during this COVID era. With the limited resources, no fans, it's been certainly a tough time, and I got to give them credit where it's due. And I think overall have done a really good job during this disaster of a time for most of us. So, alrighty, well, here's the thing, guys. The rest of the week, tomorrow's nostalgia. I'll pop in my mailbag show sometime, maybe Thursday or Friday. I'll have to see, and it's going to be just all voicemails. It's going to be a jam-packed, I have 10 of them or so right now. So if you guys have more voicemails, pop them in. It's going to be a voicemail-heavy show, as the mailbag show is called. It's not going to be a show that happens every week, but when I need to, again, I'll put it on there. If I can sneak in a voicemail, if I only have a couple, I won't do a whole show for that. I'll sneak them in at the backside of one of my review shows. But you can contribute. Please do. RealWWEpodcast@gmail.com. I've seen some of you have emailed me your voicemails. That's cool. Or, again, you can call the show. Easiest way is to call the show, if you are able to, at 518-952-0247. You can also hit us up on Patreon. Patreon.com/WWE Podcast. And you get an ad-free experience of the entire library. All how many hundreds of shows we have, ad-free. So I know some of you want ad-free, and that's how you get it for $1 a month. $1. It's like pennies a day. It's crazy. For an entire library ad-free. You can download the Patreon app, so you don't have to go to a web browser to listen to it. You just download the Patreon app, and boom, sign up and become a patron, and you can stream my shows through the app. Very simple to do. So that's how you can get ad-free. You can also head on over to the website. You know that. And also, don't forget, I'm on Twitter at wrestling_audio. Also on Instagram at WWE_podcast. And Wrestling Nostalgia tomorrow. Again, guys, mailbag coming. Friday is also going to be your WWE rivalries with Anthony DeMarco, who did an awesome job talking about the life and the career of Kurt Angle, highlighting some of his moments. And just, again, the audio, I think, is great on his end, especially when he brings in real life wrestling audio from WWE. He did a great job, and it made you really respect the man Kurt Angle and what he's gone through and the moments that he's had, and makes you remember what he's done for the business and the stuff he's put his body through. So he did a really good job last week talking about the career of Kurt Angle, looking at the as a whole. In about an hour, he covered it and did a really good job. So check that out. It's on the feed, but he'll do another one this Friday. NXT, of course, is coming your way to Thursday. And then Saturday is your SmackDown review and the debut of the NJPW podcast, New Japan Pro Wrestling. NJPW just doesn't slip off the tongue just quite yet. So I'll just call it the New Japan Pro Wrestling podcast on Saturday as well. And then Sunday is your weekend review. So, wow, tons of audio coming for you on this crazy week in politics. Whether you hate politics, whether you love it, whatever your view is of it, you can't get away from it. So we don't know the results as of right now, but you probably do as you listen to this. So hopefully it's the decision that you wanted. I'll leave it at that. I'm not even going to get into my political views. That's a dangerous, dangerous place to be. So I'm going to stay away, and I'll just say I hope it went your way. So, alrighty, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening. This is a really fast-growing podcast that I am thankful for everyone here for really contributing to the show being so successful. You can also go over to Apple Podcasts and give us a rating and review. Tell a friend. Go on Spotify and subscribe there. Go on Google Podcasts. We're everywhere. So, guys, thanks so much for listening to the show, and I'll be talking to you soon.